Hello, Ken Spriggs here with part 2 and the finale of my Stargazer 2001 tiny moon bus build with my lunar diorama. Very happy with the way this kit is turning out. It's really going to be pretty awesome when it's all completed. I finished up the figures on it and the painting and everything for the base. And getting ready to go to the IPMS Nationals next week in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And I'll be bringing this kit along with me, as well as my other ones that I built recently. I've never attended an IPMS convention before. The only one I've ever been to really is Wonderfest, so I'm excited to see how theirs are and look at some other types of models as well. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look and see what I have accomplished here and the final result. The first videos that you're going to see are the building of the landing gear. This was actually filmed early on, as you can tell from the unfinished bottom of the kit. It doesn't show the progress that I had shown in the last video, so just so that you understand that. And then I'll get into the other parts that I completed, and then show what I've done with the base. I have a few ideas that I've changed a bit on it, and I really like how it's turned out. Let's go ahead and take a look. All right, so I'm putting together the landing gear sections, and they're very super tiny. Yes, the whole kit is very tiny. So I have two of them put together. See right here, and they're very well made, very intricate, and there's three altogether, one on the front, two on the back on either side. And to make this kit, there are, let's see, 3, 6, 9 pieces that you have to cut out and cut the flash off and put them together. You have the three little pontoons down here. You have this section which goes on top of the three, this little spring mechanism in the middle, these two pieces on the side which go in these little teeny holes, and then these two pieces which go into these two holes, and the back thicker part goes up into a groove right on there. So very complex, obviously, for such a tiny kit. And each of the parts, most of the parts actually came in a resin cast like this. And at first I thought it'd be really difficult. It seems really thick, but resin's a lot easier to sand than plastic because it's a smoother material. So all I did really was take this is an extra piece, rub it along sandpaper in different directions until the bottom flash becomes thin enough that it just kind of snaps off. And I had to do that with each of these parts, this part, and the pontoons on each of these. So okay, so let me go ahead and get this last one glued together, and those will be completed, and I'll probably get those painted before I put them onto the kit, because these are going to have mostly silver design. They're going to have some white on top as well. All right. All right, so one final modification that I made was to find a way to disconnect the roof light from the roof, the wiring, so I can remove the roof, because I was just having no luck in figuring out a way to wrap the wiring into there. Sorry for the focus. So I could take the roof off and it would not flex the wire or cause problems with it. So what I decided to do, and I didn't think it would be possible, but I pulled it off here, was to use one of these wired connectors that I got from Evans Designs. And all they are really are two wired connections. One has pins and one has receptacle. And they snap together. And then you wire, obviously, one end to your power source and one end to your lights, and then you can snap it together or take it apart when you want to remove it. So obviously with the limited space in the roof, I didn't think it was going to be possible, but there's actually enough room from the top of the roof to the floor of the interior that these two connectors can connect together and fit inside. So what I did was the initial hole that was in the floor for the wire, I made a big hole that the connector can go through. And it's coming out of the bottom, you're not going to see it. And once I'm done, it's going to be filled in with 5-minute epoxy anyway. Alright, so I cut off the wires in the ceiling, made them shorter, and I soldered them into the wires of the pin side of the connector, and then I have those all epoxied into the ceiling. It'll look pretty, but you're not really going to see them from the inside, and once I paint over it, it will just look like an uneven surface. Then once that was done, I made sure that the pinned part was in the right position and epoxied those into place. And right now I have both connected together. So let me take those apart and I'll show you what they look like before I connect. Okay, there you go. So there's the connector with the pins sticking down in the ceiling. And obviously that's going to be visible, but there's no way to do the lighting without there being some type of visibility when I take the roof off. But it'll certainly make it easier. So this whole part will just come off of the kit. The pins will snap out of the connector, and then this part will be coming up through that hole in the floor that I made, and that'll be glued into place on the bottom of the kit. So it'll be positioned. So what I'm going to do now is snap these together, run the wire down through, and I'm going to epoxy it into that opening right there so it makes it solid. And then I'll remove it once it hardens enough, and then epoxy around that piece down in the bottom so it'll be firmly connected just like this one is. And then they'll both just snap together, and I can just snap the roof down onto it, and it'll make contact, take it off when I want to display it. Alright, so let me get that completed, and a few other modifications I made, and once this is done, I'm finally ready to go ahead and get some paint on this kit. Very complex and a lot of modifications for such a very tiny kit, but I think that made it all the more complex because I'm putting lights inside of it and that sort of thing. So, okay. Alright, so I got a coating of flat black over the whole thing, as you saw. And then I started on the interior and I put some white down on it and let that dry. And then I put down some a flat coat so it would not be prone to chip off. I had a few tiny little places that did that, but it's not a big deal. I can repaint them. And then once I got the inside of it done, I went ahead and put the roof on and did the outside of it as well. There are the pins that I showed previously for the power for the roof. A little piece of blue plastic on there to give it a bluish tint. And there's the connector in the bottom of the ship. I covered up these black portions when it was flat black so they wouldn't get any of the white on them. Alright, and I've started painting the interior. I have some black all gray on the floor right now. I'll be doing some Some light brown on the chairs. Not sure what I'm going to do on the controls just yet. I'm looking at the directions and just seeing, but or not the controls, the cargo, and come up with some different color ideas for that. Probably like a lightish green on those side panels, and then I still have to do the window inserts, and those are going to be a dark tan, and they have to be glued in place for the roof. So okay, all right, so coming along really well. I have all the wiring coming out the bottom and all glued in place as well. I'll show you that here shortly. So let me finish working on the interior, then we'll get the roof on, and then I can work on the decals, and I have to do the landing gear at the bottom and the engine bells as well. Okay. Alright, so I got quite a bit more painting done. I got the engine bells glued in place and painted with the chrome silver, and I have black, flat black inside of the nozzles. I got the decals on, so they're the silver ones in the front. I never realized, but looking at stills from the movie, there's 3 circles and the decals came that way at the bottom of the nose. I also have the decals on the roof, the USAA. They went on pretty well, and then I used some Walthers Solva set to put them down, and you can't see any carrier film now. I got the window inserts in and painted like a light tan. I think it's just called Buff from Tamiya. I got some painting done on the inside, as you can see. And I got the inside of the bottom part painted as well. I wanted to put some color in there, so I used some chrome silver on those backpacks and the helmets, and then I just put some blue on the backpacks and some red and green, like they're 2 different color helmets. And I know it's not the ones they used in the movie, but I just wanted to look kind of cool and have some color. So I have a darker green that I lightened up a bit with some white for the side panels. I used flat earth for the seats. Okay, so that looks pretty cool. All right, and I have the landing gear all painted. So I have the silver on the bottom and the white on the top part. So I'm getting ready to go ahead and get those glued in place on the bottom, and started working on some of the figures. You can see that he has some silver on him for a spacesuit. That's what they're all going to have, is just silver spacesuits. Tiny bit of flesh for their face and hands, and some like brown or darker colors for their hair. I still have to do the chairs for the cockpit and get the pilots glued into those first before I can glue them inside. They'll be a little delicate, but I'll be able to get them in, fish them in through there. So, okay. All right. So coming along really well. Just about done with having the whole kit put together. Once I get the landing gear on and the figures inside, I'll just have to come up with the windshields and work on those to make them look realistic, and then the little antenna on the top, and that will finish up the actual kit. And then I have some other things I have been working on for the background of my lunar base, and we'll take a look at that here shortly. Okay. All right, and then there's the finished astronauts and the moon bus sitting on its base. very, very tiny, as you can see. And I just used, it's called N-scale model railroad figures, as I said before. And I just painted them all up in a silver spacesuit look. A little bit of black highlights on it. It's kind of hard to see, but I have the pilots up in the front. And their chairs, and they're glued in place as well. Okay. All right. Looking pretty sweet, actually. Really happy with how this is turning out. All right, so I'm doing some finishing touches on my little moon bus, and one of the things that I am building, that I'm working on, a part that I've been kind of hesitating and avoiding because it's been challenging for sure, is to do the windshield. This kit did not come with any of the clear parts for either the inside windows or the windshield. The inside windows are easy. It's just a strip of thin clear plastic over them. The windshield, though, is a little more tricky. Now, I know the actual ship didn't have the full dome like the kit did. It just had a strip on the inside, and most of this was open. But again, I'm recreating the kit as it was from Aurora, and so I want to have the full domed window covering the whole thing. So what I'm using, and this is really great for a lot of things if you need a curved surface. It's just a clear plastic Christmas bulb that I got at Hobby Lobby, and it's very flexible, very thin. You can cut it with scissors, and it's really clear. It's a nice clear plastic, and it's curved, so that's the best thing about it. I got it initially for my board Discovery, which I'm going to be using for, because the windows in the doorways are curved. So that's perfect for that as well. And it's easy to cut. I looked around for a lot of ideas, and that's the easiest one that I found to get something that's a curved surface. So what I did was I took the actual window from the full-size kit, and I put some tape over it, and then I took it off and flattened it out, and then I did the technique I've shown before, where I take a picture of it on my iPad, and then on the iPad itself, I simply shrink it down and then put a piece of transfer paper over it and just draw the figure. This kit's about roughly, well, it's a little less than half the size. So I had to play with it a little bit, but I got the general shape of it. And then I cut it out in some tape, put it on here, and cut it out. And then to make the opposite side, I just tape this on the inside so it would just reverse it. And I would get the opposite piece, and then just hone it down. Now the trickiest part is that this window comes over and then curves back. That was the hardest part to get. So to get that accomplished, I used my little handy dandy self-made little styrene bending tool that I made. And all this is, it's off now, is a low temp glue gun. And I cannibalized it, took out the aluminum heating part, and it's still wired into all the wires. And they're nice and sealed. And then I stuck it into this clamp here, and it ended up melting into it, which is fine. These are fairly cheap clamps. So it's permanently melted into this clamp, and then I just use this bigger one to clamp it onto my table here so it's solid. And then all I do is I use it originally for styrene stripping. So all I do is take the stripping and I just use two hands and I just rub it along it, and it just heats it enough to bend it, and I can get some nice 90-degree angles or other angles on it. So this was a little trickier. Initially when I tried it, I was getting some melting. It was doing like a 90-degree curve, which I didn't want. So I had to test it a bit till I got it to be just right. Mostly I had to slowly stick it on and rub it and take it off. Stick it on, rub it, take it off until I get a nice little arc. A little bit of it was starting to melt, like the edges of it, but fortunately I had to trim it anyway, so it worked out. So the initial one that I got was this one here. And it's not bad, it's a little short. So I made another one and I'm starting to work on getting that bent. I almost have that honed in. The right side I already have done, and it's on there. It's not permanently attached, but there we go. That's pretty cool. So you can see I have that nice bend in it. Some slight gaps, but nothing major that's going to be noticeable. But it's going to give that look that I want of the full dome on it. Make it look more realistic. So, okay. So let me work on the second one, get it finished up, and then we'll get it attached onto there. I played with a few ideas for some canopy glue, also some micro crystal clear. Not real happy with either one of them. It's supposed to dry invisible, but they're really not. They're definitely still going to be noticeable. So what I might try to do, they're a fairly good fit. There's an under edge on the top. I might just stick maybe some CA glue up there just to catch it and hold it in place, and just sit it down where it's supposed to be, and then not glue the rest, so I don't see any noticeable glue marks, because that's going to look pretty crappy. All right, let me go ahead and get that worked on, and once that's done, all I have to do is fashion an antenna, scratch build it, and the ship will be done. And then I've been working on the moon display, so that's about ready to wrap it up as well. Okay. Alright, so as you saw from the previous stills, I built up another little part here in the front, and with the styrofoam and then some of the foam paste, let that dry overnight. And I painted it, and then I cut out a little Aurora symbol, and I glued it onto there, because once again this is going to be imitating the box art. And so in the right corner at the bottom, it has the Aurora symbol. And this symbol, this picture, I just took some images of the box, the original Aurora box, off of the internet, and I printed it out on some glossy photo paper. So it's a little nicer. It's got a little bit of a gloss to it, you can see. I had to enlarge it quite a bit, so if you look at it really closely, you can tell it's a little grainy, but it looks fine from a distance. So I don't have the original Aurora box. I had one in the past, obviously, but I don't have one, and they're very expensive. The new Mobius one uses the same picture on it, but the logos are different. Obviously it says Mobius. The back is different. It doesn't say 2001: A Space Odyssey. It just says the Moon Bus. So I wanted to emulate the box from the original, so I had to get some pictures from the internet, and they're fairly decent pictures. There's quite a few of them out there. So I also cut out, I mean, not cut out, but I took the image of the top, just the top logo for the Moon Bus, and I superimposed it onto a bigger space background so I can do a backdrop. And I made several copies of it, but this is kind of my first version of it. It's just glued onto some foam board. This one has some white in it. I have some other foam board that I bought that's darker, so it blends in a little bit better. And you can see the 2001: A Space Odyssey, the movie of the century. and I just superimposed it onto some space. So what that's going to look like, this isn't the final draft of it, as I said, but that's going to be just like that. So it looks pretty sweet. There's a little bit, I had a few rough versions, like the T's nipped off a little bit, since I had to just basically cut out that whole part so it'll go over top of the the space background and blend it in. So okay, all right, so that's going to look pretty cool. Let me go ahead and get the moon bus wired down into it, and I'll show you what that's going to look like with those things on there. All right, and there's the moon bus sitting down there on the base in the back, glued onto it. And as I showed in my previous still, I fashioned a little mini antenna, as you can see right there. I think it turned out really well. I just used some little bits of styrene and tried to imitate the bigger piece, and glued it on and then painted it silver. So, all right, and the windshield turned out really nice. I really like how those look. And I just used the merest of AC glue at the top mostly, just a slight bit on the left side at the bottom because it wasn't sticking right. But as little as possible so it wouldn't really show those telltale glue marks on the windshield. So, all right, so a few more things I want to do on the backdrop, and then we'll get this wired up and get it finished up. Okay. All right, so I wasn't overly happy with just the flat part of the back here, and just a thin piece of foam board. So as I showed in my previous stills, I cut out some foam board and made some sides, and then I cut out some images of the sides of the box to basically make it look like there's a box on the back, a smaller box, which I really like a whole lot better. It gives it a little more like heft and thickness to it, and it looks pretty cool because the idea is that this is like a 3D representation of the top of the box or the front of the box, and so this would be how the box would be, and it would be showing that. I also glued on the back a piece of actual cardboard from a box, from the Mobius box. So I cut that out, and it's just a square or a rectangle. Cut it out, glued it on the back so it would obscure the back and look like the bottom of the box. And it actually is box cardboard, which is an odd kind of a cardboard. It's not really dark brown. It's its own unusual shade, and it's kind of hard to find. So that was the best thing I'd come up with, and I wasn't worried about cutting that box up of the Mobius version of the original Mobius version. The new version, the back of the box has pictures of the model, so even this is getting hard to find. So, all right, so I have that all completed, and I have the moon bus glued down onto the base, and so it's looking pretty sweet. I didn't really have a spot to put the remote control sensor, but I have it wired up to remote control, so it's just underneath it in that opening where the battery is. So I just have to point the remote at it and tilt it back a bit and point it, and it comes on. So let me go ahead and turn that on, and we'll see the final reveal. I think it turned out fantastically, and then we'll go ahead and wrap up this build. All right, there we go. So we have the lights turned on, so you can see the pale blue in the back, and it doesn't look, in real life it's not as bright a blue as it shows up on the camera. It's a more pale blue, which is the way that it looked in the actual film. You can see the little astronaut figures in there, which are pretty cool. I have the red, which oddly enough looks more red in real life than it does on the camera. I don't know why that is, very strange. And then I have the two headlights. Let me turn it around here on the front, which look really cool. Actually, it looks pretty good there, because with the, I think with the headlights on, it doesn't kind of make the red look too washed out. So that looks really cool. When you can see the headlights on it as well, but it looks really awesome in person. You can see the headlights reflecting off the lunar surface there. Turn this around. Okay. All right, so very pleased with how that's turned out. I definitely like the idea of the box in the back more than just having a flat surface. It gives it a whole lot more character to the kit. And then plus you can see on the box there the actual photo of assembled and painted model, as it says on the kit. So you can get an idea of that as well. One other thing that I noticed, and I hadn't mentioned before, apparently there's two different versions of this Aurora symbol. The box image that I showed in the beginning is more of just an outline, and it doesn't have like the blue of the Aurora. But there must have been more than one version, which I didn't realize, because I got that image from an actual picture of one of the original boxes. So I didn't realize that was the case, but I like that one better anyway, because it matches the blue up here of the moon bus on the box. So okay, so that is going to wrap up this build. I'm really happy with how this turned out. Hope you enjoyed watching along with me. I will be taking this to the IPMS Nationals coming up here in about another week, a little bit less actually than a week. August the 8th, 9th, and 10th in Chattanooga, Tennessee. So I will have this kit there along with my other ones down there for that convention. So okay, all right. So thank you to all my subscribers, and I will be showing some footage from that convention after I return from it. So I will see you then. Thanks a lot.